Hello, meat eaters. This is your favorite doctor of education. My channel is called Take the Meat, Spit Out the Bones. I'll be sharing education research that has tons of meat, but you may find some bones in the message, in the research. Just throw those aside and focus on the meat of the video's message and the research. So today we will be discussing teacher pay. If you have watched all my videos, in some ways I talk about teacher pay and how much teachers need to be paid more money. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at the research as this channel does. We look at education research. So I'm going to share my screen and I will be putting some of these links in the description box below. Okay. So here, this research is from the Learning Policy Institute. So the researchers, Desiree Carver-Thomas and Susan Patrick, researched about teacher compensation throughout the country of America. So let me just tell you, research is great, but there is a lot of gaps and errors and things that are not considered or up to date with research. So let me just tell you, always take everything with a grain of salt. Take the meat, spit out the bones. Because the thing is that a lot of these calculators or salaries and how they measure cost of living and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate can vary, right? What the levels of poverty in this country and how much it realistically costs to live in major cities in this country, inflation. So we need to take everything with a grain of salt, but then also we need to just really look at these numbers, and it also leaves out how much money teachers spend out of their own pocket for their classrooms, for their students. They never factor that in, right? So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to make a future video about, on average, how much teachers spend in the classroom. And I think it's grotesquely underreported and probably under-researched too as well. So let's start looking at the data. So let's look at the state-by-state analysis of annual starting salary. So here, if you notice, this is the salary in America. So the lighter colors are pretty much less than 35,000, right? So you could see the color variance. And so the higher salaries you'll find in DC, New Jersey, yeah, pretty much. And then you'll go to like New York, PA, Connecticut, Mass, right? So you'll see this in charts too. So you'll see this link in a description box, so you can see for yourself all the different types of salaries. So if you're going into education, what does teacher salary say, the average annual starting salary? So this is the starting salary with bachelor's and no experience. So who pays the most? The District of Columbia starts out teachers the most, and Jersey, California. So you could see, and who is the least paid? Is that Montana? Not Montana. Oh my goodness. Okay. But the thing is, there are variations. So this is on average, right? This is not actually the lowest starting salary, because I think I was reading in another article that I'll show you in a minute. Pennsylvania, some counties in Pennsylvania starts their teachers off at 15,000. Okay, yeah, abomination. So the US average for teacher salaries is around 41,000. So we've kind of finally got over the 40,000 hump, but still, when you think about where people live and the amount of money teachers spend out of their own pocket to fund their classrooms and their students' lives, this is not enough. Double, hands down. Everyone in education should get double. I know we have a lot of definitely successes with unions, love unions, right? But at the same time, cost of living, right? So this is a map, a state-by-state analysis of annual starting salary adjusted for differences in states' cost of living, right? So let's look at the cost of living. So compared to the actual salary, is it comparable to the cost of living? And oftentimes it isn't. It's either less, a lot less, or almost on par. But the thing is that when they measure cost of living, is it a realistic measure? I think a lot of these measurements that are used in some of the data So these research are just reporting the data, but when they measure, so let's look over here. So cost of living. So what does the fine print say? So cost of living talks about apparel, education, food, right? Housing, medical, recreation, transportation, other goods and services. But what if, you all of a sudden had to pay for dental because your school district didn't pay for dental and you're out $5,000, right? So, or transportation, you have to buy a new car, or, it's just everything is different. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but then this is the research, right? So here, these are the cost of living adjusted annual salary, starting salary. So like if we go back for the average annual starting salary for District of Columbia is 56,000, right? So the cost of living is around 50,000. So they kind of pay above the cost of living in DC. That's relative, because what if you want to live by yourself and not with a roommate, right? So by yourself is a lot more money and your salary may not go far away, right? So apart from that, so look at this research on your own, but I want to make a couple of points. So the teacher wage competitiveness. So this is very important because teachers' wages are not competitive in comparison to other college graduates that have graduated that same year in your state. It's not competitive. So let's look at the ones who kind of are competitive and then who aren't. So Wyoming is kind of competitive, right? So it's like 2% less than how much the people who would be making like a first year salary probably coming out of college, right? But when we look at like District of Columbia, they had the highest salary paid, but they're really not competitive compared to the other folks who are graduating with college degrees, right? So, look at this. So now this chart right here gives you a full picture of all the data. So the starting salary, their rank in the starting salary, the cost of living adjusted starting salary, and the cost of living adjusted salary, starting salary rank, wage competitive index, and wage competitiveness rank. So, we picked DC, right? So we talked about DC, they're ranked #1 in the country. You start off typically 56,000, but then you kind of are paid a little bit above the cost of living. They're ranked #1 in cost of living adjusted starting salary rank, but they're really not competitive. They're 31 in competitiveness with other people who are graduating with a college degree. So look at your state, right? So look at your state. I'm going to scroll a little bit and you can stop the video to see your state if you're a teacher or if you're wanting to be a teacher in their rank and if they're competitive, right? So let's see, like New Jersey. New Jersey is #2 in the country for starting salaries. Cost of living adjusted, they're pretty decent, right? So you start off at 53, but cost of living is like, you probably would need like a 47, I guess, 47,000. So then #3, they're ranked pretty high. And they're also ranked in wage competitiveness too as well. So they're not that far off with comparable graduates, first year graduates with a bachelor's. So Jersey seems like a fair, decent, fair bet when it comes to teacher salaries. All right. But at the same time, it's still not enough, because if you listen to my other video about I Love Teachers, all the things that teachers do and the responsibilities, well, why are they paid so little compared to someone graduating with being a doctor or an accountant or a nurse or an IT? Are they not as valuable or even more valuable because they taught all those folks, right? So, okay, so that's I want you to look at that data, but I'm going to read a few points that was summarized by the NEA 2019-2020 teacher salary benchmarks. So some of these salaries too, because this article, the one I just went over, was published from 2022, but I think the data was from 2019 to 2020. So if you've got a new contract, these numbers may look a little different right now, right? So this is from 2019 to 2020. So the average starting teacher salary from 2019 to 2020 was $41,163, an increase of 2.5%. So this is the greatest increase from the Great Depression. All right, not the Great Depression, the Great Recession. But why? Why? From the Great Recession why it took 11 years, right? The fourth time 11 years with a growth in average starting teacher salary kept up with inflation. Why? Why do we have to wait? But then the thing is that teachers are still underpaid nevertheless, right? So when we look at the average top salary for teachers is around 75,913, right? Though a maximum salary of at least 100,000 is available in nearly 1,200 school districts, which is good. But you know what you have to do to get that 100,000. You have to stay in the field for a good 30 years, and you may have to have a PhD. So it's not like they're giving you 100,000. No, you have to work at that same school district for 30 plus years. And then oftentimes you have to have a doctorate for that, right? So do you know how costly it is to get education in this country, right? So let's look at this, right? Starting salaries range from 18,500 in a few rural Pennsylvania school districts to over 70,000 in a handful of wealthy, high cost of living school districts in California. One pays beginning teachers $80,000. Look at the disparity right there, right? So if I'm in if I'm in a rural Pennsylvania school district, I have teachers barely getting by. What do you think? Not to say that these teachers aren't, great teachers doing well, but if you are living in poverty, can you go and do your best every single day? I'm sure a lot of you do, but that's a lot of stress. Poverty brings a lot of stress to people, but then it also gives a lot of stress in the classroom, right? Because we see with children who are impoverished, how sometimes they are extremely stressed and traumatized in the classroom, but you have your teachers not making money. So now let me just tell you, remember I said how much money teachers have to spend out of their pocket. Can they spend out of their pocket? Do they have extra pencils? Do they have extra paper to give kids? But then if you're in a rich school district, you have teachers who make 80,000. They have a little bit more money to spend, right? So why is it that the poor in this country are not getting the same teacher than the rich, right? So we got to talk about this, the wealth gap in this country, but also the racial wealth gap as well, right? So at 53,177, New Jersey maintains the highest average starting teacher salary among the 50 states, right? So that's good. So we have definitely gotten over the hump of 40,000, but still, this is still not enough, because as a new teacher, if you want to gain more folks into more quality folks, not just folks, more quality people, more competitive folks, you have to have a competitive salary. So why would I go into education where I can be an accountant and make some more money? I could be a nurse and make more money, right? So why would I go in education? And then the stress and strain of education, you see it in the turnover and attrition rates of teachers. So that's going to be another video talking about the attrition and turnover rates of teachers. Salary has a lot to do with it, right? So, okay. So a good point right here. Teacher pay tops out at 100,000 in around 10% of the US school districts, while 20% districts pay a top salary that's below 60,000. So if I'm starting off at 40, 45, and my top salary is 60, I see no real graduation of increase in my salary at all throughout my 25, 30 years of service. So I'm only getting in some school districts, you can only get 15,000 from the time you start. So for every $10,000 after taxes is around $500, right? Don't quote me, 600, it's like $600. So I'm graduated from 21 to probably 50, 60 something, only getting an extra like $900 in my check a month. Does that make sense? Because cost of living is serious. So actually, let's look at a couple of things before we go into cost of living. So let's just look at another thing. This is another article from Economic Policy Institute. Teacher pay penalty dips but persists in 2019. Public school teachers earn about 20% less in weekly wages than non-teacher college graduates. So if I'm a school district, are people trying to, go into education if they're making 20% less? So, in a description box, or rather in the comments, well, in the description box, I'll have all these research, but in the comments, please tell me what jobs, we could do the research, but what jobs earn more than teachers? And I stated a few, but tell me, do you earn more than teachers if you're a recent college graduate? Do you earn more than the teachers in the state that I showed? All right, so now let's look at an actual teacher salary. So all teacher salaries are public knowledge. So you can type in whichever school district or city you're in and type in teacher salary, it's going to pop up. So I did Charlotte schools in North Carolina. So here, if you notice, let's just say this is the starting salary, $48,637, okay, for Charlotte teachers starting off. But then I also typed in LA. LA is one of the highest paid, or rather California is one of the highest paid in the country. So they have a starting salary of around $58,000. So, but when we look at the cost of living calculator. So I live in North Carolina in Charlotte. This is a CNN Money calculator. And like I said, North Carolina, right? Hold on, sorry. North Carolina, you're making around 48,000, right? That's the South, which is cheaper, right? Not much, but it's cheaper. But you're starting at 58, only 10,000 more in California. All right, so let's look at the cost of living. So if I'm making around 50,000 in Charlotte, I should be making around 80,000 in LA because groceries are more. Housing is almost 200% more, right? Utilities, transportation, healthcare is pretty much almost the same, right? So yes, you may be making, okay, decent money in LA. Oh, I'm starting off at, 58, but really you should be making 80 because the teachers in Charlotte are making 48. So make it make sense. So if you look at, start doing your research. Look at some of the smaller counties that may start off with 40, 50, $40,000, but then say, compare it to some of the bigger cities. And does it really match up? Right? So you may think that you're making, I start off making 60, 70,000 in a bigger bigger city district. But if I was living in, an obscure town in the South, it's not comparable, right? Because my rent in a bigger city could be $2,000, $3,000 a month, right? So teacher pay is really, really important to attract more folks into the actual field, right? So we need to pay teachers more. We get more quality teachers too as well. We get more teachers who want to stay in the profession, right? We attract more folks who want to be a teacher. Can you imagine if all teachers started off? Well, all the teachers who start off at 40 really start off at 100. Everyone will want to be a teacher, right? The people who start off at 60, start off at 120. Everyone will want to be a teacher, right? So this is just teacher pay. We're going to, in probably future videos, look at admin pay. But teacher pay still, this is, yes, we have had an increase that almost kind of matches inflation, but that really is not saying much because we are underpaid already. And then think about all the things you have to buy as a teacher that comes out of your pocket, right? I've had people who said when they were a high school teacher, they knew kids who were living by themselves and they had to help pay their rent. Yes, teachers do that. Teachers feed children, teachers buy supplies, teachers buy curriculum, books. You don't see my apartment. I have 8 bookcases of books, school material that I have bought. Hello? What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we really going to value education in this country? We need to pay teachers more. All right. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe, and come back for another video. Okay.